Hey everyone, welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Nerdarchist Ted, and today I'm joined by
Nerdarchist Dave.
And today we're going to talk Critical Role, review, recap, Campaign 2, Session 7. Jump down the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy the newsletter, get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with us.
Holy crud, Nott is going to ruin his reputation after this episode, for sure.
Oh my word.
They're going to have to add a comma.
They are going to have to add a comma. Holy crud.
But we're not to that part yet.
All right, so as always, spoilers. We're talking about Critical Role Season 2, Campaign 2, however we're going to call it, Session 7. And it looks like, they had some technical issues. Or at least, for those of us who are reviewing on Alpha,
it was split up. Yeah.
And what was a little annoying was after I got through part 1, it jumped to a whole entirely different episode of Critical Role.
I had the same thing happen. Yeah.
I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah, it took us back an episode or somewhere. It wasn't the beginning, though.
It was, absolutely.
It took us to a weird spot, I think.
Yes. So, what did you think?
It was good. There was a lot of combat. There were dungeon delving, essentially. I know it was tunnels, not a dungeon, but same difference. We got a new character.
They got a guest star. I thought he was badass, but before we even get to that, I want to say, Sam's tribute to D&D Beyond was hysterical. And not having watched season 1 or the first campaign, that they made a comment to the fact that Sam played a bard, and if he was doing that kind of stuff throughout the actual play, I think that'd be cool. And
are you ready to go back and watch 5,000 hours?
I think I am. I think I'm gonna bite the bullet and go watch campaign 1 at some point.
Listen, I just wait for him to cast Tasha's Hideous Laughter.
And he did this time.
Since he's gotten the power, he's done it at least once an episode, which is cool. I almost feel like the villains, the monsters, the bad guys should always just have to roll with disadvantage when he casts it, because he always tells like a really stupid, corny joke. That just makes it. Yeah,
the dad joke.
Yeah, which totally makes it. So we had a guest on this show. It didn't take too long for him to show up. And I think, what was the character's name? Like Shasta or Shanasta? Shakasta.
That was played by Kari Payton. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And, he's voice actor, along with the rest of them. Known for Walking Dead, as well as he's a number of voices in Teen Titans Go.
Now, was it me, or did it seem like he was playing a blind cleric?
He was absolutely blind.
Okay, I'm just checking.
he had the ability to sense his surroundings in some way, shape, or form, but he didn't have pupils. He had, stark white hair, totally white eyes. It was pretty interesting, and I thought he was a cool addition, and the way he kind of shows up on the scene, it was definitely making an entrance.
He just kind of appears during one of the fights.
Right.
We had some cool dynamic fights. We had some fun moments. We got to see Beauregard get Spartan kicked down a mine shaft.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting to see all of that take place, because she usually is pretty good with a lot of her roles, and
not that time.
And I'm like, oh no, what's gonna happen? And
she took a bunch of damage.
He took not all that much. I think it was only 14.
Yeah, well, it was 40 feet. So,
but that's still 40 feet. That's 4d6.
They weren't great rolls.
They weren't.
Well, I mean, 24 is the most, so
that's true.
It was better than average damage. But and then she pops back up. I was a little disappointed. I wanted to see another Null knock her down. I thought that would have been funny. They had to look up the shove rules real quick and figure that out.
They did.
They're saying, I'm like, that's not how it works, which is fine. And it's like, dodge didn't help at all. Although it did for the dex saving throw, except for she borked the roll, so it didn't matter.
Was that your favorite moment?
No, but it would have been if he would have kept knocking her down every time she got up. That would have been funny for another Null to shield rush her when she popped back up. It's kind of a dick move, but I probably would have done it.
Well, I mean, in some of my games, I've used, when you've got a small character at low levels, you use the giant frogs and you keep swallowing them. It can be pretty hysterical.
Yeah, well, I think that does make it comical when they keep falling for the same trick or whatever, just because of the dice. because the dice know. What are you gonna do?
The dice sometimes just know.
But and we also got we got some instances where Nott was pretty brave in doing things and took some calculated risks.
He ran out to save the boy. He ran out to kill the kid, and we'll get to that part.
Baby goat? He killed a baby goat?
Baby something.
So the character's really starting to develop, and Nott, although Nott is not brave, she is very compassionate. It would seem, and wants to help others when she's not robbing them. It's not personal.
It's just about the coin. I thought it was kind of cool that he actually is willing to rob Shikasta, and then at the end of the session, he brings the money to Caleb, and it's like, I've got some book money for you.
Yeah.
I'm like, so it's not even him stealing it for himself. He's stealing for the wizard.
Well, yeah, Nott, she's kind of a kleptomaniac. She likes shiny things. She likes pretty things. And she also really likes Caleb. So, so he's like her. So she kind of has a good heart, but at the same time, she's a crook. So she's conflicted. She's complex. She's like an onion. She's got layers.
So, as we said, he came up to rescue the boy. And I thought that was kind of cool. It was the boy was being held by a couple of gnolls, and the thing was alive, or he was alive, and like it was very possible that they were just going to start eating while he was alive. So that would have been pretty horrific to go through, especially with his mom locked behind the door, within sight of it, and she's locked with a whole bunch of dead bodies.
So yeah, they managed to rescue a couple of the prisoners. So that was cool. When it's all said and done, they meet this new character, and they interact with the character, who has a really kind of a cool feel and story to him. And as it progresses, I mean, it's kind of like just it's your typical dungeon kind of crawl for an adventure till they finally get to the end, and they have to face the big bads.
And the big bad, which I'm sad that I didn't anticipate, because they kept talking about the spikes in, the spikes on the glaive and the spikes in the Pack Lord's armor. And after we realize it's a manticore, it's like, the manticore spikes, that's what he's got, and he's decorating himself that way. I'm like, oh.
It was some cool foreshadowing. It's not something that you would really pick up on, though. Unless someone would have investigated the spikes and would have been able to know these are from a manticore. Literally, when he introduced that last encounter, I'm like, they're all dead. Fuck, they're all dead. They're just going to die. There's no way they're going to take out this manticore and this priest.
I didn't know what the priest was going to do. But honestly, when they're like, I don't think we can take this. I'm a spectator, so I don't feel like I did anything wrong. But I totally whipped out the monster manual and said, how strong is a manticore?
It's like a CR3 or something.
It is a 3.
I think it's a strong CR3 though.
It is. It's got some serious stuff.
Do you know the hit points?
Not off the top of my head. I got a monster manual over there though.
Okay. So yeah, I'm like, man, they can rack up some damage. They got some ranged attacks, and that became a problem too at one point in the fight. But I want to say Nott did fix that problem real quick, like.
So as we said, he went and killed. Well, as we find out, during the NPC on NPC conversation, it's all about the manticore trying to feed its little baby, and Nott had snuck into the encounter, into the alcove without anybody witnessing. And after the manticore engaged the party, he went over and.
Well, no, that is what happened. But I think how it happened was kind of important, because at first Nott is trying to convince the prisoners to run away, and they're like terrified and they're scared. They're not budging, and she's like, I need to do something in order to get these people moving. And what Nott comes up with is to go over, and the other problem is the manticore's in the way.
Yes,
it's between the exit and them. So what Nott does is goes over and then, like you said, kills the baby manticore, which definitely gets the mother's attention. Now that opens up the way for the NPCs, and Nott's like, run!
He basically says GTFO.
Yeah. And very shortly after that, Nott gets dropped.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a foregone conclusion. I mean, Shikasta doesn't have a lot of hit points for a 3rd level Tempest Cleric, but Nott is pretty squishy, and the fact that he was brought down to a single hit point was pretty awesome. That it's like, oh, one round of attacks and he's just barely standing.
And not only that, Beauregard runs in to grab Nott and get her out of there, and draws an attack of opportunity. And Matt's like, the attack opportunity is going to be on Nott, not Beau, because Beau was not the one that just murdered the baby.
Yep. Yeah.
Now, here's what I thought someone was going to do. I thought someone was going to grab the baby and try and do like a hostage situation. Like, I think that's where my mind went.
Okay.
But nope, not at all.
Yeah, so Nott goes up there. It's like, and he's gonna stab the thing, and he rolls damage, and Matt's like, dude, it's helpless. You've got sneak attack. He drops the extra couple dice. It's like, whoa.
Does like somewhere between 18 and 20 points of damage in one shot. It's helpless, and like he's like, yeah, the eyes aren't even really open yet. Never really stood a chance.
Absolutely. So off's the kid. The Manticore comes charging over to Nott. The captives. There's two townsfolk that are left and not eaten. They go off running. The priest winds up earlier in the counter casting Hold Person on Fjord, which the Manticore, I was going to say Minotaur. The Manticore was going to unleash a volley of spikes at him. Being helpless, they would have been with advantage. So thankfully that didn't happen.
Well, that's all part. Like that was all part what Nott was doing as well. He was trying like drawing the aggro in order to save the townsfolk, trying to get the Minotaur I keep doing it too, trying to get the Manticore out of the way, and also trying to protect Fjord. So it was a really tactically, it was a really good move, sorta. Just not great for Nott the Brave. And, and it absolutely worked. At one point, 3 of them were essentially down. Fjord was held, and Jester was unconscious, one of your clerics, so that's a problem. And Nott was unconscious as well. So it was looking a little tight. I mean, they got, 3 of the 7 people incapacitated. It's kind of a big deal. Like I said, a Manticore for the 3rd level party is not really a joke, especially with the cleric running around. And, he was the priest was doing his part and putting a smackdown on people.
Now, the thing to look at when you're dealing with all of this is, okay, yes, you've got an advanced number of players. You've got 7 as opposed to the typical, 4 to 5. But by the time that they're getting to the big bad, most of the spells are gone. Like, they went into session 7 seriously depleted. I think Jester had like a single spell slot left to use for the entire session. So there's something to be said there.
Yeah, the flow of everything with going from essentially from combat to combat. I think it was like 3 or 4 combats all back to back. So that definitely put a hurting on the party. So them being a larger party, it kind of gets balanced out from doing that. They finally get to the end battle, and thankfully they got a fresh character essentially in towards the end that probably helped them a lot.
So he got to shine because he got to have his full allotment of spells to be like, oh well, I'm gonna have my spiritual weapon, and I'm gonna be able to cast Cure Wounds, and he kept wanting to use Thunderwave, and the nerd in me is like, there's not an ideal moment to use it. There's no grid. Like,
yeah, not entirely true. Like, if you could have got someone near that pit, that'd have been a great place to Thunderwave.
That would have been fantastic.
But that being said, another good example from that session too is the guest who doesn't seem super familiar with the game, and I think like he did a good job handling it. And the other players did a pretty good job, as well as Matt, of helping him engage the game without having a good solid grasp of the rules. Like maybe he played another edition or Pathfinder.
Well, he says that he plays with his kids.
Yeah.
So like he plays something, but there were times where he kept questioning like, what die do I roll for this?
Yeah. So. Like they fed him the rules and helped it, and they did it in a way too that kind of expedited things without being like patronizing or anything like that. So I thought that was cool. That was a good example. I mean, we do something similar in our games when we have new players. We try to sit them next to more experienced gamers, and hopefully not the GM, so their questions can be directed at another player.
And he was sitting next to Caleb, and Caleb was like, as you're watching, you can see the two of them having a conversation, and there was at least a couple of times where like he's, oh, this is what I think you should do right now. This is a better option. And quietly he was explaining, what the nuances of this and that.
Or sometimes he was like, I'm not going to tell you what to do. You tell me what you want to do, and then I'll help you with the rules or whatever after that. So, I mean, that was a good example of being a helpful player, because I've also heard horror stories of people trying to, like, basically run someone's character for them, which you should never do anyway. But I thought it was great. He's like, yeah, you know what? You tell me what you want to do, and then I'll help you with the details. Yeah, so that was kind of cool to see, especially since it's similar to what we do in our own games.
So there was a lot of great stuff. It was a dungeon crawl or combat after combat. They got to mix it up. They got to have some role playing in there. I felt, judging based on the terrain that was there, I want to know, like, how did Shikasta get there? He's got gnolls on this side. He's got gnolls on this side. He didn't seem to be like the overly sneaky type. So I felt like, to a small extent, there's like, you're just here. And you set off an explosion somewhere. Was there another tunnel that he went down that collapsed behind him after he blew it up with a dynamite? So I wish that there was just a tiny bit more explanation.
I don't know. I feel like there's the potential for his character to be important later, whether it's run by him or becomes an NPC. Mm-hmm. Like I felt like it was alluded to, like there was a greater meaning or purpose to his character, and I don't know if that was developed with him and Matt, or if Matt had an idea and be like, hey, can you play this? I have no idea how that came about. But also the way that when they ended the session, how
that was awesome.
Yeah. And, the significance of the reed that he kept playing with and things like that. Mm-hmm. So, his familiar was great.
The Duchess.
And you don't typically get a familiar as a cleric, so...
Well, that was one of the things that I was curious about, because I know all about playing a cleric with a familiar. So I'm like, well, he was a human cleric. We know he had the Tempest Domain. So did he have...
Ritual Caster?
Did he have Ritual Caster? Did he have Magic Initiate that would have given him Find Familiar? Or was there, as you're saying, was there something else going on with that character that led to other things going on? I don't know.
He was known by the townsfolk, and when they were confronting the guards at the end, like the one woman went to speak and say something more, and he shushed her. Kind of as if he wanted them to not know he was there, or something like that. So there was definitely things, and it could just be some flourishes that a player added in,
right.
Or it could be a part of the game. Personally, even if it was flourishes that the player just added in, me, GM, I make notes of that and be like, this could be something later on, especially if I know that player probably isn't coming back. Be like, well, I'm going to do something with this later. This is too cool to let go.
So now I will point out that we've got some crazy range of numbers with their stats, and they did put his little stat sheet up there, and he had a 4 strength. I was like, holy crap!
Oh, I didn't see his stats. I totally missed it.
Yeah, he had a 4. Strength. So they made a joke about you're going to carry the bodies out and what have you, or and he's like, your carrying days are over. So he knows that he's not carrying anything.
Yeah.
So he had
Empress. That's all I could carry was Empress, or was it the Duchess?
The Duchess, the Grand Duchess. And would float on his shoulder or rest on his shoulder, and it was a hummingbird, and they loved the fact that it was a hummingbird because it would zip and move around. And
with that name, though, I feel like it should have been a peacock.
I don't know. I really want there to be something with that character and that familiar later, because I think that's going to be cool. And as we alluded to, if you didn't watch it, at the end of the session, he just kind of sinks away into the bush or the forest, into the darkness, and he's just gone.
After leaving a symbol behind.
Oh, I didn't hear the symbol part.
Yeah, he describes himself being off by himself and taking his reed and making an H-like rune in the sand and the dirt.
Yeah, you're right.
And then he faded. Then he fades into the forest.
So it's it was really cool. and it's like everybody just breaks out into like, so it was a lot of fun. And when you've got an NPC that's, or when you've got a player who's coming as a guest spot, and they get to show up cool, they get to leave cool, it's just awesome. If you're planning it that way, it's like, that's style.
Yeah, and it just makes me super curious as whether Matt's like gave him some beats to hit. Be like, hey, can you slip this in at some time? Can you slip that in at some time? And that's something as a GM you don't get to do that often, so it is kind of cool when you could do it if you could. When he shows up, again, they're like overly dramatic, and a lot of parts they're very overly dramatic. They gave me crap in the comments for it when I'm like, they're a little over the top with when they do new abilities and stuff like that. And they're like, can't they be excited? I'm like, yeah, there's excitement, and there's like over the top excitement, and whatever. I mean, whether it's acting or that's how they are as individuals. They're having fun with it, but I'm having fun by poking at it a little bit because it's over the top. I can't remember us doing that at the table. Maybe the closest we might have got is when Ryan, rolled like a 71 with exploding dice in the Open Legend game for a roll that really didn't matter.
Yeah, that's
which means he rolled 3 20s back to back and an 11 to get 71.
Yes.
So we might have had like maybe a similar.
It's like, oh my god,
because it was crazy dice stuff, but. I don't know. Maybe a little more reserved, I guess.
So I kind of thought it was cool when, like, all said and done, and monsters have been defeated. Shikasa's got one spell left. He knows that his pouch is gone, and he casts Fog Cloud just to go have a conversation with Nott and be like, "I know it was you. And we'd have words, but I like what you did here." So you've got this beat in this speaking voice, and it wasn't until like after I watched it that I looked up and saw like what he's been in, and I'm like, well, I haven't watched Walking Dead, but I do know Teen Titans Go because my kids watch it.
Yeah.
So like now. Like, I'm seeing Cyborg in this...
Cyborg having this discussion with the Sonic counting.
So it's a little bit amusing, to all of a sudden have this, transposed conversation. I'm like, well, that's not a human cleric anymore. It's a giant robot.
It's a cyborg. Oh, no, it was a good session. I enjoyed it. We'll see what happens next Friday for us. I know you guys stay up and watch it on Thursday.
Yeah. So as I said last time, the Matt Mercer always says, is it Thursday yet? But to me, I ask, is it Friday yet?
So with that, guys, you can put your comments down in the comment section. Let us know what you thought. Agree, disagree. What were your favorite moments? While you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
You can check us out over on nerdarchy.com.
So until next time,
stay nerdy.